Looking for a new broadband provider, but struggling to decide which one to join? There are now so many different broadband providers on the market that choosing one can be a bit difficult. So today, we've explained how to find the right broadband provider for your needs. But before we begin, thanks to 3 for sponsoring this video. Their 5G hub deals offer a simple, cheap way to get online at home with fast download and upload speeds from our testing. So click the link in the description to the 3 home broadband coverage checker and put in your postcode here to see if you can get their 5G hub deals at your address at the moment. So the first thing to do when searching for a broadband provider is find out what's available at your address. Because these days, there are a lot of smaller independent networks you might not have heard of that can offer better deals than the bigger providers. The problem is, you can't use comparison sites for this because they only display providers that pay them money. So here are the categories of broadband providers you should look for at your address. The first and biggest category is OPENREACH. This is BT's infrastructure, which is available almost throughout the entire country and is used by a huge range of other providers as well, like Sky, BT, Now Broadband, PlusNet, and a lot of others as well. We think EE is one of the better OPENREACH broadband providers at the moment, and we're currently using them at home, so you can click the link in the description to their website and put in your postcode here to check your coverage with OPENREACH. If you can get OPENREACH, you'll probably see a similar range of deals on the Sky, PlusNet and so on websites as well. The next category to check is Virgin Media, which has its own broadband network in the UK, currently only used by the company itself. You can click the link in the description to the Virgin Media coverage checker to see if you can get their deals where you live at the moment. The third category to check is wireless broadband, whereby signal is delivered using the 4G or 5G network instead of using a fixed fibre connection. The main provider to check here is our video sponsor 3, because while EE and Vodafone also offer this service, they're a lot more expensive, and 3 is the only one that's really cost competitive compared to fibre broadband at the moment. Their 5G plans are actually a lot cheaper than most fibre connections, so we think this is worth checking as an option, which you can do at the link in the description. Just as a quick side note, if you live in a remote area where you can't get fast fibre broadband, there are other wireless internet providers it's worth looking at to get you connected. We'd start by looking at our reviews of a company called National Broadband, which you can find on our channel. We've explained a bit more about the differences between wireless and fixed broadband later on in the video. The final category to check is the hardest one, but it's often where you can find the cheapest prices and sometimes the fastest speeds, so it's definitely worth looking at. Basically, apart from the big networks you've probably heard of like Sky and EE, there's now a new generation of broadband providers called ALTNETS, like Hyperoptic or Community Fibre, which service specific areas in the UK. For example, Community Fibre is mostly focused on Greater London, offering cheaper prices than most of the bigger networks, and much faster speeds as well. So here's how to find the ALTNETs available in your area. We'll put some logos on screen now, and if any of them look familiar, it's probably because you received a flyer in the mail or something at some point, telling you about their deployment in your area. We've also linked to a few of the bigger ALTNETs in the description. If you live in London, for example, it's worth clicking the link to the Community Fibre website and checking your postcode, and same on Hyperoptic if you live in a city centre. On the other hand, Fibrous is the biggest ALTNET in Northern Ireland at the moment. The problem is, apart from the 3 we just mentioned, there's probably at least 50 other different ALTNETs available in different parts of the UK. So it's worth doing some digging to find any that have deployed in your area. And if you're not sure, leave us a comment with your town and we'll see if we can find any. So now you know which providers are available at your address, the next step is to consider how much bandwidth you really need, so that you don't spend more money than you need to, and find a provider that meets your needs. To do this, click the link in the description to our Internet Speed Needs calculator, and fill out the form here. Just put in some basic details about how you use the internet, and how many people live at home, and once you hit calculate, you'll get a rough idea of a minimum download and upload speed you might need. For example, if you need a minimum of 86 megabits per second, and the only 2 providers available are EE and Virgin Media, we can see that a suitable plan with Virgin is £26 a month at the moment, and £28 a month with EE. It could also be that you might want to exclude providers at this point, based on the packages they have. For example, say you needed a 200 megabit download speed, and you were looking at Vodafone Broadband. The 150 megabit option would be too slow, but there's nothing in between this and the 500 megabit option. So if the price gap between these two is too big for your liking, though it's not that high in this particular case, you might like to look for a provider that has a 200 or a 300 megabit option instead. But there's a lot more to consider about each provider other than their speeds and the prices they're charging, which we'll explain a bit later in the video. So you might have noticed that 4G and 5G broadband can be a lot cheaper than getting a fibre connection. For example, the 3 5G hub starts at just £17 a month at the moment, compared to the cheapest EE broadband plan, which is £10 a month more expensive. So you might be wondering, is wireless internet worth looking at? It definitely can be, but it depends on your needs. The disadvantage to wireless internet is your latency can be a bit higher. It's normally around 35 to 45 milliseconds, compared to about 10 milliseconds with fibre broadband. This doesn't affect most things you do online, but it can be a problem if you're a competitive online gamer. We found from testing, most online games were fine on the 3 5G hub, like Rocket League, but if you play really competitively, you might prefer to have a lower ping. And also, the speeds on offer from wireless broadband can be more variable. 3 advertises 150 megabits per second with the 5G hub, but we normally saw 200 to 300 megabits, varying throughout the course of the day. You can't currently get the 900 megabits or more that fibre offers with 5G, and the exact speeds you'll receive depend on the 5G signal where you live. Though there is a 30-day return policy with the 5G hub, allowing you to test and see what the speeds are like at your address before you commit to the contract. But there are a lot of upsides to 4G and 5G internet as well. It's often much easier to buy on a flexible basis, like on a month-to-month rolling plan, without having to commit for 12 or 24 months, like you do with most other broadband providers. And since there's no connection to your phone or broadband socket, you can pick up the router and take it with you anywhere in the UK to get online, with the 3 5G hub at least, meaning you can use it when travelling domestically. But the biggest advantage is probably the price. There are very few, if any, fibre broadband providers that offer speeds of 100 megabits or more for less than £17 a month. So if you're not a very competitive online gamer, click the link in the description to the 3 home broadband coverage checker to see if 4G or 5G internet is an option for you. Now that you have a rough idea of the providers you might consider buying from, you want to eliminate ones that don't have good customer service, so that you can get the help you need if you ever have any issues with your connection. And a good way to do this is monitor the numbers of customer complaints that Ofcom receives about each provider. We've linked to this report in the description if you want to check it out. You can see from this table, for example, which providers receive the most official complaints to Ofcom, how satisfied each provider's customers are, how long they wait on hold on average, and a lot of other metrics as well. The problem is, a lot of smaller providers like ALTNETS aren't shown in this data because there's not enough information to report. So for smaller companies like Hyperoptic, we recommend looking at our individual reviews of them on the channel to get an idea of how good their customer service is. Next, it's worth looking at the Wi-Fi router the provider will ship to you to ensure you get good Wi-Fi signal at home. Some providers like BT, for example, are still shipping quite outdated Wi-Fi routers to save a bit of money. For example, the BT Smart Hub 2 only comes with Wi-Fi 5, which is an outdated Wi-Fi standard, compared to the Wi-Fi 6, 6E or 7 routers that most other providers are shipping these days. In terms of the big providers, we get good Wi-Fi signal from our EE Smart Hub Plus router, and their Wi-Fi 7 Smart Hub Pro is also quite good. Vodafone's Pro 3 plans offer some of the best Wi-Fi tech on the market, and Virgin Media does okay as well if you get their newer Hub 5 router instead of the old Hub 3. Once again, to get a better idea of how good the router is that a given provider ships you, search for our individual reviews of that provider on our YouTube channel, or watch our dedicated router reviews for their bigger providers. Finally, you should have a short list of providers you can get in your area with good Wi-Fi routers and good customer service. and now it's just a case of comparing to see which is the best value for money. Fortunately, this is fairly straightforward, but it's not always the case that the lowest baseline price will offer the best value. But what do we mean by that? The first thing to know is that a lot of the bigger providers in particular have mid-contract price rises. Normally, it's around £4 a year, like you can see here with EE. So it's worth looking at the total cost over the life of the contract, rather than just the initial price that they show you. Also, be aware that certain providers offer discounts, especially if you bundle services with them. For example, with Vodafone Broadband, you can normally get £2 or £4 a month off if you're an existing pay monthly mobile customer. Plus, there's a £75 bill credit you get when we're recording this. And with BT, you get a reward card if you go to the page linked in the description, rather than just going through their homepage. They function just like a prepaid debit card, giving you quite a lot back on your bill when you buy it. So it's worth doing the math on all these different deals before buying, though it is a bit of a process, to ensure you're choosing the provider that offers the best value for money. So thanks for watching, and remember, click the links in the description to the broadband providers we've mentioned in this video, and put in your postcode to see all of the different packages available at your address, and view the most competitive deals these providers are offering at the moment. And if you have any questions about choosing a broadband provider or plan, leave us a comment below, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.